As World War II raged across Europe, Switzerland found itself walking a precarious tightrope, balancing its neutrality while engaging in complex economic transactions with both the Allies and the Axis. One of the most controversial aspects of Switzerland's role in the war was its financial dealings with Nazi Germany, a subject that would later spark global scrutiny and intense post-war investigations. While Swiss officials justified these transactions as necessary for survival, critics argue that they contributed to the longevity of the Nazi war machine, providing the Third Reich with crucial resources that prolonged the conflict. Switzerland's economic relationship with Nazi Germany was multifaceted. As a neutral country surrounded by Axis-controlled territories, Switzerland had limited options for trade. Germany was its largest trading partner, and Swiss industries depended on the flow of raw materials that could only come from Axis-held regions. In return, Switzerland provided Germany with vital manufactured goods, machinery, precision instruments, and financial services that played a direct role in the Nazi war effort. These transactions, however, went far beyond mere trade and entered the murky territory of complicity, diplomacy, and wartime pragmatism. Perhaps the most contentious financial issue was Switzerland's role as the banker of Nazi Germany. Throughout the war, the Reich relied on Swiss banks to store looted gold, which often came from occupied countries, as well as gold confiscated from victims of the Holocaust. Swiss banking secrecy laws ensured that these transactions remained undisclosed, allowing the Nazis to convert stolen wealth into usable assets. The Swiss National Bank continued accepting large deposits of Nazi gold, even as reports surfaced that much of it had been pillaged from occupied territories, looted from national treasuries, or extracted from Jewish victims and resistance fighters. This influx of gold helped sustain the Nazi war economy by allowing the Reich to trade on international markets despite growing Allied economic sanctions. While some Swiss officials justified these financial dealings as a necessity to maintain economic stability and avoid provoking a German invasion, others within Switzerland's government and banking institutions were complicit in knowingly handling Nazi assets. Documents discovered after the war revealed that Swiss bankers and businessmen were fully aware of the origins of much of the gold they received, yet they continued to accept it, benefiting from transaction fees and economic leverage. The Swiss government, despite receiving intelligence from Allied sources warning them about Nazi financial operations, largely turned a blind eye. Some historians argue that Swiss neutrality was, in effect, a convenient shield that allowed Swiss financial institutions to profit from war while avoiding direct conflict. The financial relationship between Switzerland and Germany also extended into the realm of foreign exchange. As the war dragged on and Germany faced increasing economic difficulties, the Reich needed hard currency to purchase materials from neutral countries. Switzerland became a key player in converting Nazi gold into Swiss francs, a currency that could then be used for international trade. This process effectively enabled Germany to bypass economic sanctions and continue acquiring critical resources such as fuel, food, steel, and weapons components. Without Swiss cooperation, the Nazi regime would have faced even greater financial constraints much earlier in the war. However, Switzerland's financial dealings weren't entirely one-sided. At the same time it was working with Nazi Germany, Swiss banks and businesses were also engaging in covert transactions with the Allies. Switzerland facilitated money transfers for Allied intelligence agencies, provided financial cover for anti-Nazi resistance movements, and discreetly aided the economic efforts of Britain and the United States. Swiss financial institutions thus became a battleground for competing wartime economies, where bankers and politicians played a pivotal role in global power struggles. Swiss intelligence agencies worked in conjunction with some Allied operatives to track German financial movements, creating a paradox where Switzerland both enabled and undermined Nazi economic efforts. As the war neared its conclusion and Germany's defeat became imminent, Switzerland faced growing pressure from the Allies to halt its economic support for the Nazis. By 1944, with the tide of war turning decisively in favor of the Allies, Switzerland found itself increasingly isolated diplomatically. Under intense pressure from the United States and Britain, Swiss authorities finally agreed to limit financial transactions with Germany, imposing restrictions on Nazi assets held in Swiss banks. However, by this time, much of the damage had already been done. Nazi Germany had benefited from Swiss financial services for the majority of the war, and Switzerland had established itself as one of the few economic lifelines the crumbling Reich could still access. After the war, Switzerland's financial conduct became the subject of intense international scrutiny. In 1946, the Washington Agreement was signed between Switzerland and the Allies, in which Switzerland agreed to return $250 million in gold suspected of being stolen by the Nazis. However, this was only a fraction of the actual amount that had passed through Swiss banks. Many assets, particularly those belonging to Holocaust victims, remained locked in Swiss accounts, leading to decades of legal battles and restitution claims. Despite calls for greater transparency, Swiss banks resisted full disclosure, citing banking secrecy laws that had long been a cornerstone of the nation's financial system. In the decades following the war, new evidence emerged, further complicating Switzerland's narrative of neutrality. The Bergier Commission, established in the 1990s to investigate Switzerland's wartime economic activities, concluded that Swiss banks had played a significant role in sustaining the Nazi economy. Additionally, the report confirmed that Swiss firms had profited from forced labor, a revelation that further damaged Switzerland's post-war reputation. The Commission's findings led to renewed legal battles, particularly concerning unclaimed Holocaust-era accounts, and increased demands for accountability from Swiss financial institutions. In 1998, after years of pressure from Holocaust survivor groups and international legal efforts, major Swiss banks agreed to pay $1.25 billion in reparations to Holocaust survivors and their descendants. This settlement marked a turning point in Switzerland's reckoning with its past, forcing the nation to confront the ethical implications of its wartime financial policies. While the settlement provided some measure of justice, it also underscored the extent to which Swiss neutrality had, in many cases, been an economic decision rather than a moral stance. Switzerland's financial relationship with Nazi Germany remains one of the most debated aspects of its World War II history. While some argue that the country had no choice but to engage in economic transactions for survival, others contend that these dealings contributed to the longevity of the Nazi war machine and the suffering of countless victims. The legacy of Swiss wartime banking continues to raise questions about the role of neutral nations in global conflicts and the responsibilities of financial institutions in times of war. What is undeniable is that Switzerland, despite its stance of neutrality, was deeply entangled in the economic undercurrents of the war. The decisions made by Swiss banks and government officials shaped not only the course of World War II, but also the post-war financial order. The implications of these choices are still felt today, as nations grapple with the ethical dilemmas of wartime profiteering, financial secrecy, and historical responsibility. In the next episode, we shift our focus from banking to industry, how Swiss companies and factories played a role in wartime production, supplying both the Axis and the Allies while maintaining an official stance of neutrality.